these in the past, the way
Sorry,
that we've
I forgot to record.
the way that we've handled these in the past up in Templeton, for instance, we did a joint meeting. We had a project open house in combination with the community advisory meeting. We just felt like that was a good way to draw folks. And we can set up a facility. We can do it at the school again, for instance. But we'll work with the LOCAC folks on when, where, how to put that together. Once the draft plan is presented, we take in kind of final comments, and we would prepare the final plan to go to the board for adoption.
The Board of Supervisors.
The Board of Supervisors. To be honest with you, I'm hopeful that the draft plan is not I'm not envisioning that it's an 80% draft. I'm envisioning it's a 95+% draft, that we can fully address all the comments, concerns, issues when we come to the full LOCAC, take final feedback, get your support for the plan with comments, and then take it to the board for adoption. And what would result from that is that we would have, normally what you get from the board is that they've adopted the plan and the priorities and the projects that are proposed within it. And then they did this for the Templeton project. They would then make a recommendation to direct staff to undertake future projects, including directing development work consistent with the plan. That's what kind of codifies what is shown in the plan and ensures that it gets perpetuated even when the community plan gets updated in the future. So what's nice about doing these corridor plans is that you get a little bit of a three-way communication effect.
Okay. All right. I see your hands up, Dave and Bev and Jeff. I'm not ignoring you, but I just want to walk through this. And then when we get to the end, I'm going to have you ask your questions, and then we're going to look at the sections. So after the plan and it gets approved by the Board of Supervisors, and then you'll have some priorities that have been established, then you have to go find the money, right?
So that was sure. And that is the third element that we're hoping to get out of the plan, is not only answering the question, how do we do this with the blessing of the community? What is the priorities that we would be looking at project wise? And then lastly, packaged up phases or projects, however you want to look at it within the plan, that might be low hanging fruit. And again, I go back to our most recent adopted plan, the Vineyard Drive corridor plan, that was cut into 3 phases. Not necessarily one was more important than the other, but what made it nice was that phase 1 was a, comparatively speaking, low cost project, high impact, low cost. And we used that project as part of our grant application to SLOCOG.
Got it. Okay. And all right, well, I'm not going to get into road fees right now, but I will circle back around on that towards the end. So now let's see. Dave, you had a question. Did you want to ask your question now?
Actually, it's Bev this time.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 2 questions. One is, at what stage in that series of steps? By the way, I want to say thank you for addressing our needs in Los Osos. That's really a new experience for me, and we've lived here a long time, so thank you. At what stage are you going to, or have you incorporated comments that were made at the Monarch School meeting? And the second question is, does it matter how many people actually have left those sticky notes onto different parts of the map in terms of the weight that you will place on those issues? Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Good questions.
Yeah, sure. So Bev, thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that. In terms of timing, again, we would anticipate all those comments being incorporated into the draft that would come before LOCAC after the technical advisory meeting. Timing wise, I can't give you a date on that. I'm sorry. One thing I forgot to mention is that since that last meeting, Jake has been out on family leave. He's back now in full effect, and he is working as quickly as he can to get all of the materials that were presented at the open house posted up to the website. So he was not able to get that done before he left and went out on leave, but he's coming back. So I don't want anyone to think they're going to be left in the dark. All the meeting materials will be posted up. And to your second question about how much weight does it bear, the answer is a lot. And that's part of what we did for actually both corridor plans. Is the consultant took all of those notes and comments, took photographs of the event, took photographs of the actual message boards themselves with all the sticky notes, and they're uploading those into the social pinpoint and posting those. And I'm telling you, it is important. One of the big and again, I go back to past success, Vineyard Drive corridor plan. Probably our most frequent comment was related to speed. They wanted to have speed reduction measures and speed control, and some of the solutions offered out of that plan were directly related to reducing speed. And for instance, along that corridor, they recommended that as soon as possible, that intersection, either signalization or roundabout, goes in at one particular busy intersection, and that we perform lane narrowing, which taking those travel lanes down from 12 feet wide to using wider stripes, kind of like you see in what they're doing in downtown San Luis, and narrowing down to, I think they recommended 10.5-foot lanes. And it seems minor to the casual observer, but when those changes are implemented, they do have a pretty dramatic impact. So yes, absolutely. When the more votes we see for, or issues raised for a particular concern, that absolutely has weight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Great.
Yeah,
All right, Jeff, you had a question?
Josh actually just answered that. I wasn't able to attend that meeting, and I wanted to have access to the material, and you responded that Jake will be putting it up soon.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right. So then as far as actual building out of the project, once you've decided the priorities, LOCAC will try to fund it, and then we actually get a project. I mean, I've seen the stuff on Vineyard Drive. It's very good. The roundabout, the changes that have been made on that road, I think have been fantastic. So looking forward to exactly that kind of result here in Los Osos. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of these sections that we have that are sort of priorities for us. Hopefully I picked the ones that everybody agrees on, but
Deborah, let me just kind of chime in on your final comment you made there about funding and actual project implementation. I think I've spoken to you, and I've been at LOCAC a couple of times, always crying poverty. And one of the reasons we're actually doing these corridor plans is because my vision is to create a better mechanism for us to be able to go and get outside funding. I can't repeat enough that County Public Works is a maintenance organization. That's pretty much all we do. We just if you like what you see today, to just keep, arrested state takes about $6. We get $5. And that's hard to do. Oh, and the public's expectation, of course, is an 8, right? They want $8 of service for $6, and we get $5. So we do the best we can with the maintenance monies that we have. Our ability to implement change is through the development review process. Whether you love growth or hate growth, that is the mechanism that the county has historically relied upon for project implementation and improvements, and we still do that to this day. The second way that we can do it is we can make minor changes through major maintenance projects. For instance, albeit minor, you may have noticed that when we repaved Los Osos Valley Road between the bridge and Turi, that the striping was changed to include buffered bike lanes along that stretch of road. And again, that was a minor change, but because buffered bike lanes are now part of our policy for arterial collector high-speed roads, that was a change we were able to fund through a major maintenance project. We have our road feed program. Again, that's development driven only. And then outside of that, it is the grant program. And historically, grants at the federal and state level have been really targeted towards systemic road safety. It's reactive funding, not proactive funding. And the modern funding through the brand new infrastructure bill is targeted more towards proactive funding of projects. And that's what we're working with LOCAC on. So I just wanted to, you're identifying, one of the reasons we're doing these plans is to create a mechanism for us to be contenders for some of those outside monies, because our current road maintenance budget won't handle it. And if you wait around for a maintenance project, then we're all going to be gone. So.
Right. So we'll again touch on funding again after we've had a chance to look at the sections, because that's a really important part of actually seeing some changes. So I have made you co-host, Josh. So if you want to go ahead and share screen and show us some of these intersections so we can look at them a little more carefully.
You should be looking at Rodman.
Mm-hmm.
At Pacho. Hopefully that's what you're seeing.
Yes.
This is a sketched illustrative, but this is what it looks like today. It has a bike lane on the south side of the road, stop control at Rodman, and you can see just sketched in, because there's too many trees to see it.
Yeah. That
class 1 path that's terminating in the middle of that curve.
Right.
So a lot of feedback that we've heard is request to extend the class 1 path to the intersection, and then make intersection improvements, improve that crossing.
You're talking about crossing at Seawind?
It's crossing at Rodman. So
at Rodman. Okay.
Yes.
Because Seawind is a private road.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's, for the same reasons, not great sight distance there either for pedestrians. So it's better if they can be up at Rodman. I cannot find, and I don't have a history on how this path came about, but we're here to hopefully make it better and codify how this thing needs to actually terminate.
Yeah. So this is a very important intersection, obviously, because I live up in Cabrillo, and so I experience this section daily. Today, I saw a child, he was probably 10 years old, with a backpack by himself, crossing this intersection, obviously coming back from school. And, coming out of Montana de Oro, they're coming down the hill. And they're coming down the hill fast. There's no indication there that there's really a crossing. And even though there are signs saying that there is a horse crossing there, yesterday I saw 2 horses attempting to cross here at this section, and a car was coming down, and they were like annoyed that they had to stop and wait for these horses to walk across the street. We need something more here, and I have, yes, a need for advance warning. It has been asked, this question has been asked, and now I'm going to ask you, if people were to raise private money, to put in an advance warning, some sort of crossing there that would include flashing lights, if we could come up with the money for the equipment, would the county install the crossing?
It's a more matter of installation and maintenance. I think that there's a mechanism to do that. Again, part of the plan here is that we can identify those types of improvements. It makes it a lot easier for us to collaborate on stuff like that, because then it's identified versus us just coming up with it out of the blue. That's the actually one of the terms that I've tried to coin with SLOCAC actually is, where's the birth certificate? We can't fund this thing. We can't proceed on this until there's a birth certificate. That's what the plan here would do. Because right now, this is what's planned. What's planned now is nothing. I think we can all agree that intersection improvements would be utilized, but there's no birth certificate.
So the corridor plan would establish the need, the what, and the how. I mean, am I following you correctly, the process?
Yes, exactly. And so this is, again, a great example of every rule is made to be broken. And here, even though this is not a planned improvement, I think that it's agreed within the community, and it also, because of this location is not consistent with modern traffic engineering standards, we can easily make the logical leap to implementing an improvement here, even though it's not previously been planned. We can put in the what and the how into the plan.
Excellent. Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions about this intersection or any comment you'd like to make?
I would make a comment about the equestrian group. There was a there's an equestrian, I don't know if it's loose knit, but they had like an email address. Some gal gave me a post-it with some contact. I have that. And I'm asking parks, when I say parks, I mean county parks. Since trails are largely, even though this may not be maintained by parks, we see this is under their purview. So we're asking that parks would invite somebody from the equestrian community to be a part of the TAC.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know they're very interested. And one of the things that came out of our Safe Trek safety report from the consultants that came down from Fair and Piers is they pointed out that an equestrian crossing with a light, a button that they could push could also serve pedestrians without triggering any of the ADA requirements, such as, the bumpy, sloped, and well, actually, I guess it has to be flat. Anyway, whatever those things are, which add cost to the crossing, just installing something for equestrians would be versatile enough for pedestrians and equestrians without triggering any of those ADA requirements. Your thoughts on that?
So you bring up kind of a good example of where we get caught in the middle a little bit, where there's any kind of betterment involved, we can't cut corners. We're not supposed to cut corners, and Public Works has done a good job of upholding that over the last few decades, and we're going to continue to do that. If it's a project that's implemented and maintained by the county, it has to meet state, federal requirements, period. Where there's projects that are proposed, installed, and maintained by private development, they can usually get away with a much lower threshold. An example is that there's a couple of developments in South County that have equestrian facilities that are within the county right away, that are part of the project, but the county has absolutely nothing to do with them. They have an HOA that maintains it. It was installed as part of the development. And that's where it gets tough, is that if the county were to make those improvements, they would not look the way that they look.
So is that good or bad?
It's
Nor neither.
Well, it keeps me out of court. So any kind of improvements that are going to be advanced by the county, they're going to be full improvements.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know,
Good.
there's going to be, if there's a crossing, there's going to be ADA ramps. There's going to be the proper setback. There's going to be, what other various improvements are required at the time.
Mhm.
And then if there's, let's say, for instance, if there's, the example I always go to are bulb outs. Bulb outs are a great improvement to slow down cars as they approach the intersection and make a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians. So we
Yeah.
would do those kinds of improvements.
Okay. All right. I don't know if is it Bev or is it Dave?
It's Dave this time.
Okay.
I guess I got confused in the description of whether or not the county could actually do something that was paid for privately. So I'm just trying to clarify that, the answer to that question. Can you hear me?
Repeat your question, Dave.
So
okay.
Well, here's how stuff gets built. Stuff gets built either by the county doing it, funded through a grant program, federal funds, state funds, or local funds. We don't really have a mechanism to take in fundraiser money. The way that those projects get implemented is they get implemented through the some sort of a community betterments project, and they're done under encroachment, where we have the only involvement the county has is through the permitting process and then working out who maintains it and how it gets maintained.
Okay.
As I'm sitting here, I'm trying to think of a situation where a betterment was made that the county took over. Typically, again, that's associated with development. But if there's going to be some intersection improvement made, we would actually encourage folks, if you went out and did a fundraising campaign, to try to use that as leverage for grant funds for like LOCAC. You know, if you guys can raise $10,000 in local funds, frankly, you would be better off partnering with LOCAC to get $100,000 grant with a 10-to-1 match or something.
Okay. This is great information.
Yeah. I would love to take your money, but
all right. All right.
There's just not a clean mechanism to do that, which is why we point people towards the encroachment process. And by the way,
thanks very much.
I'm super expensive. So if you want to get something built, the best thing to do is go through the encroachment process. Because if we construct it, for instance, on every contract, I pay a 5% off the top overhead fee back to county for liability insurance and legal counsel, et cetera. So I'm already 5% more than anyone else.
Wow. Okay. I mean, this is really, really good information. So just to touch again on the funding aspect, if you were going to do a project, whether it was encroachment or whether the county was going to do it, do you first have to have money for the design and then you get the money for the actual construction? Does it go in phases that way too? Or do you actually get money for the whole thing, start to finish?
When we implement projects,
Mm-hmm.
the answer is it depends.
Okay.
Depends. Tip at a very high level, we typically fund projects in 2 phases. We fund them through the full design. Basically, we get it ready for construction. We get it shovel ready. That's usually a lot cheaper, and it shows that you're invested. And normally projects that are shovel ready can get money. And probably the most shining example is If you saw the news the last couple of weeks, they're building a roundabout at US 101 and Avila Beach Drive. That project was not funded. There was not enough money to do it, but we felt confident that once it was shovel ready, it would move to the front of the line. And that was absolutely the case. Projects that are ready to go get money.
Okay, and shovel ready means what, Josh?
That the plans are done, the permits are ready, they're ready to construct. So shovel ready is that you were asking about how does the county pursue projects? That's how we pursue them. We typically get them.
Okay. All right, but shovel ready meaning it's all designed, you have all the easements, everything's in place. Is that what you mean? Oh, I think you froze.
Yeah, it meant that we would have to have the permits, we would need to have the designs done, like for the court corridor study, everything would have to be completed, done, board of supervisors approve it with the permits, with the designs for it to be shovel ready.
Is that right?
So sorry, everyone froze there for a moment. So if
Yeah.
you could repeat your question.
Go ahead, Trish, say it again.
To be shovel ready, just for clarification, it just means that all of the permits are done, the plans are done, designs are done, approvals are all done with board of supervisors, everything is done but the build. And so if you have that done, then you go to the top of the list because you're ready to be built.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify, I was talking about the process for a county project.
Right.
Those are for county projects.
For county.
Yeah, for the county project. So for instance, we'll pick on the intersection improvements at Rodman Drive. For discussion purposes, that comes to the top of the list. It's the number one priority for the community. The plan has been adopted. We would then seek support. Most likely we would go to SLOCOG and we would advance this as a grant application to SLOCOG for project development only, which means getting the project shovel ready. Because that's kind of how SLOCOG works, is they want to see it shovel ready. So we would do that. We'd put it if the grant was approved, that's what we would do. We would take it forward, we would get it shovel ready.
And then you go out and get the funding to do the actual construction.
And then go out and get the funding for the actual construction. And it's been my experience that SLOCOG won't fund project development for a project that they have no idea if or how it'll ever get funded for construction. They're not interested in doing that.
Got it. Okay. Do we want to move on to another section now? I don't see any more questions.
So here's Doris Avenue. I think this was one of the other ones on your list.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Doris is what's not shown here is what would happen at the north east intersection. So you can see it's kind of bulbed out there. That's the undeveloped or underdeveloped properties in that area. In reality, at the time that build out comes, there would be curb, gutter, and sidewalk along fronting that property.
You're talking about now, are you?
The northeast corner.
Okay. So,
But otherwise, no other improvements are currently proposed.
So explain to me how you do a curb, gutter, and sidewalk there?
So I believe, isn't that the parcel? That is a slightly undeveloped parcel, as I recall. I'm pulling
On
up
the corner.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So is this a sidewalk to nowhere? Because
This
there's
is
a house there that is really close to the road, and I don't see how you put a sidewalk there. Josh, are you still
yeah.
with?
So right now the return that's there is just following the existing right of way. I'm just saying in theory. In theory, someday when these parcels redeveloped, they would have to make their frontage improvements, put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk, possibly widen the road along that section. But that's not shown at this point because we have no idea with, when, if, or how those parcels ever develop.
Well, I don't understand what you're talking about. We're talking about
You're Doris at LVR, correct?
I'm sorry.
You're talking about Doris at LOVR?
Right, because the school's over here on the west side of this corner.
Yes.
And so and I'm glad Meg is here now, because this is where we want a class 1 bike path all the way to the community center, and that's in the community plan.
Correct.
And so the question is, how do you make that happen when you have homes you have at least 3 homes there that are almost right up on the road?
That is an excellent question. That's also a purpose of the plan, is to answer, well, how do you do that? And the answer is, I don't know. I'm relying on gathering all the feedback from the community, from our advisory group, and our consultant to put together a solution or alternatives that satisfy the needs of the community and potentially don't impact these parcels. In theory, if Los Osos Valley Road gets widened at some future date, there's right-of-way acquisition that would have. It's a very complicated process. So this is a great example of a location. We're going to ask our consultant to give us some practical, implementable alternatives versus waiting around for who knows how long before these properties redevelop.
What does that mean? Properties redevelop?
Typically what you see if you look at the west side of Doris, you have houses, you have a parking lane, you have a bike lane, you have full travel lanes, but you go east of Doris and the road is much narrower. There's no curb, gutter, and sidewalk. It's undeveloped. And these are larger parcels, and in theory, someday someone's going to build a new house here, or someone's going to buy all these parcels and put up condos, or I have no idea what will come, right? And that is how roads historically get constructed in the county. It's through the development process.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? I was looking for the raising my hand.
Go ahead,
feature.
Meg. You can just
Thank you.
You can just put your hand up and I'll see you.
Hi. Sorry, I'm so late. I was having trouble accessing the link. So my question is, the property that is closest to the corner appears to be beyond its the property line, like it's impinging on the easement space, I guess you could call it. Have you discovered that, and what would you do about that if that was the case?
It's quite the opposite. The road is narrow through that section.
There's
Okay, 'cause
actually
it
not
looks
an
like the
easement there.
wall that he built is beyond what any other property, the neighboring properties are. And it's really obvious that he added onto the wall and extended his driveway.
Yeah, and we're not seeing a problem.
You're not seeing a problem. Okay.
This
Yeah, Go ahead, Josh.
This is what the frontage of Los Osos Valley Road looked like before the school went in. the road was narrow. There was no room for parking, no curb gutter and sidewalk. And so again, as time goes by, we would envision that, not envision, that's the wrong word, but historically what you see is that these underdeveloped properties at some point in time redevelop, and then at that point are required to comply with modern, right-of-way offers of dedication, building out their frontages.
Great. And I just,
And so this is what we want. This is a great example of what we want to answer, what's proposed is LVR's envision for widening someday through this section of road. There's a class 1 path proposed in the community plan. How do we implement that? We can't put a class 1 path through people's living rooms.
So I would like to speak to that when the time is appropriate. So Deborah, you
Yeah,
let
so
me
I'm
know.
not sure if you may have missed that part of the conversation, Meg. That's part of what we're asking the consultant to do, is where we have these impingement areas. Don't just give us what the build out 100 years from now plan looks like. Give me
Right.
some implementable, boots on the ground today alternatives.
Right. So one of my suggestions was, can we do it in phases? From Palisades to Pine and actually to Alexander, because there's already a section of class 1 pavement right there. Is there a way?
That was one of the comments that we got quite a few of those at the open house.
Yes.
That's part of it. So kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, the purpose of this plan is to lay out how do we implement the improvements that are currently adopted in the various circulation studies, the community plan, the bike plan. How can those get implemented? What does the corridor look like when it grows up? Question 2 is, what are the priorities for the community in terms of specific projects or sections of the roadway? What is important to the community so we can be mindful of that? And in cases like this, we would also want to make priorities linked together with scoped projects. And so, for instance, this section, if there's an alternative to implement a portion of the pathway with an alternative route that doesn't impact these property owners, that could be a phased piece of work. That could be a standalone project. So we're trying to do all of those things. And lastly, I don't know if you caught the tail end there, but we want to package these up in a way that they're competitive for funding.
Great, thank you. And I apologize if you had to repeat yourself.
No, all good.
Yeah, we really like hearing the fact that you're looking for alternatives, workarounds, actually, because otherwise it will be 100 years for this to, and this is one piece that's really very important to the community, to have safe access to the school and also to the community center, where we have our one and only park in the entire community of Los Osos. So, all right, let's move on to the next one, unless anybody else has a question for this intersection. Yeah, here's Palisades. What do you?
This is kind of the mirror image of what you saw out on Doris, where the road is wide on the east side and narrow on the west. There's no curb gutter and sidewalk. There's a bike lane, but there's no parking area, obviously no sidewalk, and then no class 1 path. The difference here is that I believe we already have available right of way. There's enough real estate for the road widening for a class 1 path.
All the way to Pine, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. And then just figuring out from there how to deal with that. Now, one of the other things, and this is something new, Josh, and it's sort of something that we've been looking at just to the south on Palisades, is the old Sunnyside School.
Yes.
And you may know that that's up for sale by the school district.
Oh, I did not. I knew that CAL FIRE had been using those facilities.
Yeah, CAL FIRE, and there's a Waldorf school and 2 daycare centers there. But the school district has decided to sell that property and they're offering it to the county. We, as a group, as LOCAC, as a group, we are very interested in having that become community property and incorporating that into our park, because it's 10-acre parcel with a lot of open space, basketball courts.
Dr. Bruce.
Yeah, oh, trust me. We've been talking to everybody. Like everything else, Josh, it comes down to money, right? They're gonna have to come up with the money, and money is tight right now. But
Yeah.
just with that thought in mind, where you have the community center here on Palisades on Los Osos Valley Road, and then you would have on the other side, on the south side, you would have the Sunnyside School. We would like to see a safe crossing here, maybe some sort of overhead crossing, because that's a really busy intersection. And you would want to be able to have people and children and bikes going back and forth. This is something new that I'm throwing at you. And it's mainly because we don't really know what's going to happen with Sunnyside School. But if we are optimistic and we are able to get that incorporated into our community as a public space, it would be important to have a crossing here that would provide safe crossing. Your thoughts?
From a professional level, I would recommend that you submit those comments as part of the corridor plan. On a personal note, I think that that's an ambitious idea, to say the least. I'm not sure you could get that high of a structure approved by the Coastal Commission. The amount of real estate those take up is. Have you seen the Jennifer Street Bridge in San Luis Obispo?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool.
But
yeah, you're probably right.
It's a massive structure that, and then lastly, the cost of something like that would fund massive pedestrian improvements at every intersection for probably a fraction of the price. So it's
okay. So we're really just
I encourage you to put it on your wish list, but I think it's going to rank pretty low on the chances of getting done. Sorry.
Understood. So on the community park side, there are no sidewalks.
There are
no sidewalks.
Which section are you talking about?
Well, you see the community center.
You're talking about the northeast corner.
I'm talking about the northeast corner.
Okay.
And I'm talking about the northwest corner. On the northwest is the library.
Yeah, the northwest corner only has the curb return.
Right. There are no sidewalks going to the library. There are no sidewalks going to the community center. So when we look at the corridor,
you mean along Palisades?
Correct. So when you look at the corridor plan, you're just looking at the corners. You're not saying, oh, let's continue that sidewalk to actually connect it to something, right?
Yeah, that is outside the scope of this plan.
I thought so. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I absolutely see what you're saying.
Yeah. But, again, that class 1 bike path would allow for safe pedestrians and cyclists to travel on Los Osos Valley Road from Palisades to, well, as far as we could get it, right?
Yeah, I think I'm going on a limb here, but I'm assuming that the reason that they did not proposed sidewalks up Palisades and up through the parking lot is that they're funneling pedestrian traffic between the barn and the skate park.
Oh, into the park.
Yeah,
They're sending them that way.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Doesn't help the library though,
It does not
which is
help.
on the
Yeah,
the library's on the other side.
yeah. that's-
And the light. Well, anyway, let's not get too much in the weeds. All right. So anybody else have any questions about this? Okay, Meg, you have a question? Go ahead.
Actually, it's not about this. It's about the left-hand turn lanes or the lack thereof. I believe it's on Rosina and I want to say Alexander. Is there, I know that that's on a community plan as well. And I just want to emphasize how important that is when you are driving west on LOVR. Cars stack up on those corners where there's no left-hand turn lane, and oftentimes other cars go around and drive in the bike lane to get around.
Yeah, do we have
so-
pine? Josh, did you bring pine?
You're talking about, no, I didn't. You're talking
I
about
know
Alex.
it's Rosina, and I can't remember what the other one is. I don't have my map in front of me.
Yeah, so
but
there
there's-
are left turn lanes at Alexander and Pine.
Okay. And Pine. Yeah, okay. So Rosina and is it Broderson?
Yeah,
doesn't-
yeah, there's nothing at Broderson, there's nothing at Ravenna.
Ravenna. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ravenna. Yeah,
Yeah,
those two.
between- So the current adopted plans would include widening of LOVR for a left turn lane in that stretch between, it's, as a practical matter, it's between Pine and Palisades.
Okay,
or
so
all the way
left-hand turns for all those corners.
Yeah, so it's called a two-way left turn lane. So it's similar to what's out there west of Pine.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you.
yes, that would be, again, in the full build out scenario, two-way left turn lanes in that, along that section.
When you say full built out, does that mean? So it can't,
At some future date,
it can't
when-
happen until it's widened? There's no space to do that before it's widened?
there, you mean like as in just restriping it?
Yes,
Yeah, there's not enough physical pavement.
got it. Okay,
All right. Do we want to look at this? I can pull up Google Maps and look at it. Do you want to,
At which location are we talking?
at Pine?
And what's your question about Pine?
Well, actually, I have a comment about Pine, so I'll go ahead and pull that up real quick. Because this is a comment I got from some moms. Let's see here. Where's Doris? Where's, oh. All right, so here's Pine, right?
Yes.
Here's Alexander. And here is the church. There's a lot of activity going on at the church. And I got this from a mom who has a middle schooler and a soon-to-be high schooler. And so if you live up here and you want to turn right and then left onto Pine to get either to the church for an activity or down into Baywood for karate or any of these things, you get stuck because there's a lot of traffic here that gets backed up for people trying to turn left on Pine.
Got it.
So
East.
this is a big congestion area, and people get really frustrated, and as Meg was describing, sometimes they go around. Like they'll go on a shoulder to get around.
Well, that's
Same
not
thing
good.
happens at Doris, where they'll just go through onto the shoulder to get around if they, because they just feel like they're in a big hurry. So
So
I don't know.
yeah, actually you bring up an interesting point that I'll ask Jake to be ready to address, which is there are, if we step back and look at the circuit, and I don't have an exact answer off the top of my head, but there are certain roads that are discontinuous currently, within the planned road network, that I think the vision, I don't think this is specifically answering your question, but you're just bringing up a point of discussion, which is that there are planned roads in the community that the vision would be those would take some pressure off of, let's say, LOVR intentionally.
Uh-huh.
So I'll have Jake describe that maybe in some detail when he does his next presentation. But okay, so specifically though here at Pine Avenue, so that's actually the first feedback I've heard on that. It might be up on the social pinpoint. I haven't been paying super close attention yet until they pull all that data together. But if there's issues going on there, please make sure that those are getting identified
Okay.
on social pinpoint, or just email Jake. That's really good. That's really good feedback to know. When you say
Yeah,
back,
because you can
do you
see
mean
if
it's
somebody,
the right turn people or the left turn people onto Pine?
so if you're coming from Doris towards Pine and you want to turn left on Pine, because Pine is one of those main intersecting streets, right?
Yeah.
So you get backed up traffic here, and then you have people on Alexander who are also trying to get onto Los Osos Valley Road to turn left on Pine. So you get this big congestion here. And then, of course, you have traffic coming into Los Osos Valley Road, and there's no signal there, right? So people are just going through the intersection. And so there's little opportunity for people to actually make that turn onto Pine.
Got it.
So I don't know if there's a way, I don't think you want to put a roundabout there, but a roundabout would sort of help because it would keep traffic flowing, but allow people to turn.
Understood.
I don't know what the solution is. That's where you're good.
Yeah, and I don't recall how that was identified in the community circulation plan off the top of my head. But yeah,
So-
that's a great example of the feedback that we need to hear, especially if there's like localized congestion. One of the downsides with when they put traffic models together is you oftentimes don't get some of the fidelity that you can get with just boots on the ground information if there's congestion happening off peak, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and since we're looking at this section, just to touch on Rosina and your idea or the option, okay, what are our alternative ways of getting to Monarch Grove? So if we can get the Class 1 bike path all the way to Pine Street, maybe even to Alexander, Rosina is a perfect alternative choice, except Rosina is a private road. And it was apparently offered to the county, and the county said, yeah, no. They didn't see it as an important road, so they didn't take it.
No, so roads get offered to the county in a two-step process. They get offered to the county as a public road. So the county board of supervisors will accept the public offer of dedication, essentially saying that they are looking out for the public. And it's not a county maintained road, but it is accepted as a public way. And then step 2, at such time when the road is improved to county standards and meets all those requirements, then they can be accepted into the county's maintained system. So I am looking at Rosina, and a small portion west of Pine, half the road at some point, I don't have the history, but it appears half the road was offered and accepted to the county. It does not appear that there was an offer
Okay,
otherwise. I could be wrong about other issues, but typically when a road is offered as a public roadway as part of a map, the county will accept it on behalf of the public. And there is, between Doris and Pine, you're correct, there is no established public way.
and in fact, there's a sign there put up by the people who live there that it is a private road and that there's to be no pedestrians and no bikes to go through there, and it's dirt.
Mhm.
Which is too bad because that's a perfect alternative to get to the Monarch Grove School in a safe way
Sure.
and get around those homes. So
Understood.
I don't know if those people can be talked into letting that road be open, but that would be a solution. Something to think about.
Yeah, that it would be a good point of discussion for alternatives.
Uh-huh. It would be great. Okay, do we want to keep looking at this map or should I just stop my share and let you keep going? I think I'll let you keep going. Okay, Josh, what else do you have for us?
That was it.
Okay,
Those were the intersections I was prepared to talk about, and it sounds like we covered your question on Pacho Valley going into MDO.
yeah. So I'm gonna pull up that article from Estero Bay News. That was recently, it was just last month, where they talk about the state parks taking over that road, but
Yeah,
was
email
a little
it to
complicated,
email it to
so-
Jake. He would like to know that information.
yeah. But there could be something I'm missing in that, so
Okay.
just, take it with a grain of salt, let's say that. Okay, Dave and Bev, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the other place that I brought up about Los Osos Valley Road is the fact that the turnout into the center for a left turn lane from westbound Los Osos Valley Road onto 9th Street, that turnout for a left turn is shorter than the one for a left turn, excuse me, a left turn from eastbound Los Osos Valley Road onto 10th Street. And hardly anybody makes that left turn. But lots of people coming from San Luis Obispo want to turn left on at 9th Street, go up into Bay Ridge Estates area.
Yep. Yeah.
So when that center, whatever you call that thing, the turnout in the concrete in the center of the street there at that intersection, when that was built, for some reason, they built a longer slot for turning left onto northbound 10th Street than the slot that they made for turning onto southbound Bayview Heights. And I couldn't figure that out. And I mentioned that a long time ago on Traffic and Circulation Committee. But nothing has changed with regard to that. Anyway, it seems to me that would be some jackhammer work, but that would make sense to change the proportion. When I notified the county about the location of the overhead sign, which was over the right turn lane pointing straight ahead to Montana de Oro, they did move that sign over so that it at least was over the correct lane. Anyway, at Rosina, that's been brought up a long time ago by the people on Rosina. And the thing that was mentioned at that time was the tie-up that happens at Pine Street when people from the northern parts of Pine Street are driving their kids to school. So there's a backup there at Pine Street for right turning onto Los Osos Valley Road trying to get to the school. So that's been an issue that's been brought up before. And obviously opening Rosina to the public would be an improvement for that. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you very much. So the 9th and 10th, I suspect you will see quite a bit of discussion when we present the plan and alternatives to how those intersections can be improved to operate a little more efficiently.
Good. And Bev has something she wants to add.
I just want to add that the people who came to TNC years ago about the Rosina problem was that is it's just dirt road and it's very dusty. And people going on that road, which I guess is under their bailiwick, would create so much dust that they were going to shut that road off. So that's why they put up the sign. So that's some background. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Bev.
And so here between Bush and 9th is where you're talking about putting in some medians. Is that right?
Again, I don't have the circulation plan memorized, but I think going back to, I think it was Jeff had the question about one of the illustrative showed installation of median islands. Again, I don't have the final circulation plan in front of me, but there's multiple locations along this corridor that, again, going back to my original statements, the circulation plan simply says limit left turns or restrict left turns between X and Y. And okay, what does how do we do that? What to do is to restrict left turns to improve traffic flow, but how do we practically implement that? Those are the questions that we want to answer. The item that Dave just pointed out is a good example of why on earth is the left turn lane for 10th 2-3 cars longer than the left turn lane at 9th. Again, those are the issues that we want to get raised and how that looks. But the purpose of those is to restrict turn movements so that the traffic on the main line can flow faster.
So Jeff, your concern was the turning into Los Osos Rexall drugs and the ale house. Is that what you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, both going in and coming out. Yeah, that like my broader question was something that Josh mentioned earlier, is that the study is going to incorporate the previously approved studies, and this was on a previously approved study. So my broader question was, can those be amended or not? That was, in my example, was that there was no way to get in and out of the Los Osos Rexall or the ale house. I think the ale house was also islanded there.
Yeah,
so that was my broader question: are things like that were in previously approved studies, can those be amended going forward, or are those carved in stone?
They would be carved in soapstone.
Okay. All right.
A little bit of it's softer than granite, but
okay.
Those are the results of what the traffic model came back with and I'll try to speak in kind of high level concepts to get the efficient traffic flow. Let's say, for instance, at Fairchild intersection may require turn movement restrictions further west, closer to Sunset or 10th Street. And again, I don't have the math that's particularly in front of me, but when you start removing, for instance, if there's a recommendation to restrict turning movements, when you start pulling those out, you would have to change the traffic model. And I can't say, for instance, how that would impact the traffic model without going rewriting history. I will say, however, that I think that I'll speak for Jake, that he would be supportive of the plan's adoption, including its own set of recommendations. So again, let's say, for instance, there's a restricting left turn island in certain sections of LOVR. if there was strong community sentiment either for that or against that, but it was contradictory to what's in the current adopted traffic plan, I think it would be within the purview of this document to recommend an alternative for future updates to the circulation plan. And that was kind of my point earlier when I was commenting to Deborah about this is like a three-way communication tool. I'm looking not for this plan just to simply be the final end all be all, but I'm hoping that this will inform future work. So the community circulation plan is probably on track to be updated in the next 24 to 36 months. Don't quote me on that, but I can see that happening, because as communities evolve, we have to keep we're required to keep those documents current. And that would be the time to then incorporate recommendations of this plan.
Mhm.
But the
Thank
final
you.
document, yeah, it has to be consistent. But I wouldn't object to offering up, especially if there's some potentially flawed recommendations in the circulation plan.
Great, thank you.
That's great.
You bet.
I think that's great, Josh. And what's interesting is the circulation plan addresses only vehicular traffic. It hasn't addressed other types of traffic like bicycle and pedestrian, and we all know that that's something that everybody wants to incorporate now in these more modern documents. And so we're trying to like fit those pieces together, right?
Sure, exactly. So the last thing I wanted to just touch on as we're kind of wrapping up is, I think this is the appropriate forum just to give you guys a bit of a sneak peek. One of the other, I don't know if it's an alternative, but a comment that's on the table with the consultant is, as they're developing potential alternatives, particularly in this section, between Bush and South Bay Boulevard, what we've asked them to do is look at, are there changes they could implement that would result in a safer road, a better consistency with the community plan. It would reflect community feedback and comments, but would be below the county's level of service thresholds. And so what I mean by that, and not to get too into the weeds, is that the County Board of Supervisors has adopted that all county intersections are required to operate at a level of service C in the rural areas, which is basically minor congestion during peak hours, and level of service D within the urbanized areas, which is frustrating but not head-banging congestion. Level of service D, this is somewhat of colloquial, but a level of service D is the equivalent of wading through one, possibly two cycles of a light. So you'll come up on a light, it's red, and it's so congested and it's so backed up, you'll have to wait your turn to go on the second cycle. That's the equivalent of, I'm giving you a very high level overview, but that's the equivalent of level service D. What we're asking the consultant to do is take a little deeper dive in, and I don't know this will be the case, but I want to give you the preview on that we may be coming forward with a plan that says, okay, if you want to implement these alternatives, you might have to live with a level of service F for 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day at, say, 9th Street. And I'm making that up. And so we would obviously vet that recommendation through this committee. We would vet it through LOCAC. And if it was supported, we would then go to the board. So I'm describing that because I'm trying to give you a preview, but I'm also wanting to demonstrate that we are looking at every knob that can be turned to try to implement what the community is looking for. And I'm telling you that because in other communities in the state, that's become a more readily adopted tool that people are willing to live with. If it means slower traffic and if it means easier crossings for pedestrians and better access for bikes, they're willing to live with a little more congestion.
That's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off because there's only so many minutes in the day. And there's only so many signal cycles you can get through and so many cars, and we can't just widen roads infinitely, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if we want to add pedestrian enhancements, if we want to add bicycle enhancements, the trade-off then becomes, well, are we willing to live with more congestion? I can't confirm that that's actually what's going to come forward, but I did want to just give you the heads up that that is an alternative or a tool that we've provided the consultant as an option, that we don't want them to be strictly bound by this level of service policy. The board makes the rules and they get to vote against their own rules sometimes. So that may be an option here, is we choose an improvement that's great for the community, but for a short period of time could result in a level of service that's below the board's standard. So sorry if that's a little bit in the weeds, but I didn't want that to be sprung on the group when the proposed plan comes forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining that. And we will definitely have some conversation around that. The good thing about that is it makes people drive slower because that's a big issue for us. Okay, I see Dave and Bev, you have your hand up again real quickly because we want to let Josh get back to his family. We so appreciate you coming tonight.
You bet.
Go ahead.
Right. Thank you. It's Dave. Thanks a lot for your help tonight, Josh. But what I wanted to say was on the level of service business, basically the level of service is for cars. That's what we're talking about, right?
Correct.
So,
yeah,
so the
that's the
level of
county
service,
standard.
so if in fact it improves things for pedestrians who aren't on the street now because of the problems, and bicyclists who hesitate to go out now because of the problems, then level of service being less good for cars is inevitable, it seems to me, and that's great. And the other thing I wanted to mention on this corridor study is you didn't mention the part out by the mobile home parks where obviously the 4-lane setup makes it real difficult for pedestrians and for drivers going in and out of those. But I'm sure that'll be brought up later. Thanks.
Yeah, there's been a lot of comments about that, but
Yeah, thank you.
we didn't have time to get to that. But yeah, we'll follow up on that conversation. All right. Anybody else, something you want to say before we let Josh go? Oh, looks like you're all clear. Josh, thank you so much for coming. I'll ask the committee to stay on for a few more minutes, but we'll let you go. And thank you so much for your time and bringing all that information.
And thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. Thank you, Trish, for having us. Again, you have to pretend I'm Jake. So if you have questions, concerns, you're welcome to email me, but you're just going to clog up my inbox and I'm just going to send it to Jake anyways. He is a point person on all this stuff. So.
All right. Good deal.
He's my boss.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Wow. Okay. I'm so glad we had this meeting and we were able to get Josh here. And let me stop sharing this. I think we have a lot of, a lot of things to think about and a better understanding of how this corridor plan works and what it will mean for us as a community. And so we want to be able to know how to step on the gas and step on the brakes as this process moves forward. So I would ask each one of you to think about the priorities you want to focus on. I know we all have our favorites, and make sure that the right comments and, if we can, direct them to what we feel would be the best solution. Let's make sure that that gets entered into the document. As he said, the more comments on a particular section, the more weight it has. So it's not too late to be adding comments in. Any other thoughts from the committee? Anybody else want to?
Are you talking about the pinpoint interactive
You can
map?
still put comments on the
Oh,
point.
I thought, okay, good,
No, you can still do it.
good to know.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something, and that is,
Go ahead, Dave.
it's been in the news that they're not going to put the transportation tax on the ballot. And I don't know if that's been mentioned at this committee before, but it's just too bad. And clearly, what needs to happen before the next election is education and rabble rousing out there to let people know that it's important, because if the county's poor, they can't do anything. And if we got problems, there's no way to take care of it without having people pay a little bit more of tax. So anyway, that was my 2 bits for the meeting.
Yeah, Dave, thank you. I was going to bring that up with Josh, but I felt like he had already, given us a lot. Just a comment about that. I went to the SLOCOG board meeting when that was being discussed. And the problem with that board is that the cities each have a representative, and then the county has 3 representatives on the SLOCOG board. They're the ones that would have to approve putting that on the ballot. And 2 of the cities, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was Arroyo Grande and Paso Robles. I could be remembering wrong. But anyway, a couple of the cities are doing their own road tax. And they said, county, we don't want you to go on the ballot this year. You guys wait, because we want to do ours first. And that's how it, they sort of put it off, and they said, okay, well, we're going to do a poll and see, if we can, how people feel about it. I didn't hear the results of the poll, and I'm going to reach out to James Worthley and see if I can find out the answer to that. But I think essentially there was not enough support on the SLOCOG board to allow the county to go forward to even put it on the ballot. I think it would pass. I could be wrong, but the cities can do their own thing, and they didn't want the competition.
And unfortunately, after they pass theirs, then next time around, those cities aren't going to want to vote for one for the county, because those people just passed theirs. So
Exactly.
great.
Exactly. So yeah, it was disheartening, to say the least. But I'll try to get more information about that from SLOCOG about actually what happened there. And because I was definitely, pushing for it on every level. Anybody else? Any questions?
Yeah, sort of off subject, but I think I remember in the last meeting, you were looking to find a grant writer for some of the different projects that we're thinking of. Is there any news about that, or nothing?
I haven't had
Okay.
any luck.
Okay.
But I like what Josh said about, if we do fundraising, we can always fundraise to create the seed money for SLOCOG to go out and get the grant. And sometimes that's what they need, is that little bit of seed money to go out and find the right pocket of money. So
SLOCOG would be willing to basically underwrite the grant or write it for funding for any of the projects?
Well, I think he was talking, because we talked about doing you weren't here, I don't think yet, Meg. I asked him if we could do a private fundraising. Like, let's say we want to put a crosswalk at Rodman. Can we raise the money to buy the equipment and then the county put it in? And he was, that kind of didn't work. Because the county has to do it the county way.
Right.
But he said you could raise money to, start a project that then LOCAC could take those monies and go out and find the money to pay for it. So,
Okay. Spending their time to
yeah.
get the funding.
Yeah. So it was a different approach. So that was something
I see.
interesting. Yeah. Dave, did you want to say something?
Thanks.
It's Bev again. I just wanted to say, how much seed money do you think that would be? How much would we need to get?
It depends on what you're looking to do, but it's a good question. I mean, if you're just looking for a crosswalk, which we desperately need,
Right. What would that be, do you think, for seed?
I don't know. But what I do know is that Cabrillo Estates has a property owners association, and so they're well organized, and so there would be an organization we could approach and say, hey, is this important to you? Would you be willing to, put some money towards creating a crosswalk here? And I think we would get some people who would be very interested. So, but I don't know how much it would cost. I don't have any idea. But
So
I will.
Oh,
I
sorry.
will
Go
look
ahead.
into it.
So this is a long shot, but I'm remembering way back when there was fundraising for a swimming pool at the community center that never occurred, obviously. Do you know what happened to those funds?
Yeah, the money is still at the CSD. It was going to be used for the dog park. But
Okay.
the dog park didn't get built because they had the money to build it, but they didn't have any money to maintain it. And they didn't want to build it if it couldn't be maintained.
And can that be reallocated to another project, or is it only available for the dog park?
I see, that was before my time, so I don't know
Okay.
what the restrictions might be on that money. I know the CSD has that money, but we can ask. We can find out.
Okay.
I had heard
Just a thought.
that it was only about $3,000. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know how much money's there, but we can find out. No, I heard it was that they raised a lot of money. A couple $100,000. That's what I heard. Now, I'm just telling you what I heard. I don't know.
And that's what I heard, so who knows?
So I'll try to find out. We'll speak to the CSD and see what the details are there.
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? All right. Well, that was a fun meeting. Thanks you guys for coming. And I will stop the recording. I forgot to start it.